In this video, I will be answering one of the most debatable questions amongst the RuneScape PvM community. What is better, the two-hander Noxious staff or the Duel Wield Seismics? Both tier 90 weaponry, which are both very similar, making it hard to differentiate them from each other. There will be three distinct topic areas in which I will use to answer this question. Firstly, looking at the abilities in detail and their specific ability rotations to determine which style of combat deals more DPS. Secondly, I'll be looking at popular boss monsters such as Rise of the Six, Virago, Kalphite King, and Nex. Thirdly, finalizing with which rotation is easier to learn, relating to the combat changes recently introduced into the game. Alright, so as you can see, I'm at the Lumbridge dummies, and I'm going to be looking at the abilities in detail now. The fundamental debate between two-handed weapons and Duel Wield almost comes down to the simplicity of whether Sonic Wave out DPS's Concentrated Blast. These two are both basic abilities, and you interchange them depending on what you're using, depending on whether you're using a Duel Wield or a two-handed weapon. So Sonic Wave is a two-hander basic ability, and when we look at it in depth, the Sonic Wave ability, it's a focused blast of magic that pummels your target, damaging and knocking them off balance. It deals 157% of your active spell's damage, and your next attack has a 10% bonus to accuracy against the affected target. Now, whilst using the Sonic Wave ability, whilst I'm at Lumbridge dummies, you will notice it's just a one game tick ability. Now, that is very important, the fact that it's a one game tick ability, and also that your next attack is boosted by 10% accuracy. Those two distinct points really determine this and do play a large key role to determine whether two-handed weapons can still be on par with Duel Wield. Let's take a look now at Concentrated Blast. Concentrated Blast, it has a 3-beam effect, so it casts 3 beams. Each beam deals 75% of your active spell's damage, and then that is also increased by 7% with each beam. However, Concentrated Blast is not a one game tick ability. Concentrated Blast is in fact an ability where you have to wait approximately 1.9 seconds for that second beam to completely be casted out. Many hardcore PvMers will cut off the Concentrated Blast after the second beam, and that is to allow them to use another basic to charge their adrenaline up. There are some extremely powerful combinations out there when you compare them with two-hander and Duel Wield. Duel Wield, you want to be making use of Concentrated Blast as often as possible, and with two-hander, you want to be making use of Sonic Wave with Fire Breath and a Dragon Rider amulet. Alright, so now we've been through Sonic Wave and Concentrated Blast, and essentially that is what's going to determine which one is going to be higher DPS. That and the ability base damage. Now, the ability base damage, which you can now see on screen, there are two screenshots. The one on the left is Duel Wield Seismic, the one on the right is the Noxious two-hander staff. As you can see, the ability base damage is slightly higher on the Duel Wield by 52 damage, which is equal to 2.7% more base damage. Now, both styles of combat, two-hander or Duel Wield and two-hander, were put into a full DPS Sunshine rotation. Now, Sonic Wave and the 10% boost in accuracy on the next attack when using a two-handed weapon was taken into consideration. And because of this accuracy boost from Sonic Wave, that is why you can't simply just compare the base ability damage which you see on screen, and instead you have to go into a full rotation with a Sunshine to really analyze it. Now, despite this accuracy boost dealt from Sonic Wave, Seismics came out on top with roughly 0.5%, so roughly 0.5% more DPS overall. So even though the abilities are better with the staff, Seismics just about come on top with slightly more damage. The difference in damage is extremely minuscule, especially when you consider the price differences between the Nox staff and the Duel Wield Seismic. Furthermore, we are going to have to take a look at boss monster scenarios to add another dimension to this debate to determine which weapon you may want to use. We are now going to look at the second topic area together, and we're going to look at 4 different bosses, as I said in the introduction. We're firstly going to start off with Rise of the Six, also known as ROTS, across the PvM community. Now, when you're doing Rise of the Six, you happen to run around, and if you look at the mechanics of this type of boss fight, you are having to run around a lot, especially if there's 3 melee brothers on your one side. Then they're going to be spinning a lot. You're going to have to run away from the spins whilst also trying to deal DPS at the same time as running if you want to get speed kills. Now, Concentrated Blast, it casts 3 beams to complete that ability, right? And even if you want to complete 2 beams of it, it takes 1.9 seconds for that third beam to cast anyway. So If, let's say, you're at Rise of the Six and you cast Concentrated Blast, and let's say you're in a bad position where Arim or Carol will start their fire ability where they will cast their arms out in the air and they'll circle around with like a wave of fire essentially, and if you get caught in that, it's deadly. Also, let's say if a melee brother is about to spin on you, then if you're using the Concentrated Blast ability, you will not move. You can't move until that ability is finished. Therefore, Nox Staff comes in very useful because of the Sonic Wave, how it's just a 1 game tick basic ability. Now also, after you use Sonic Wave, it does give that 10% accuracy boost when you use your threshold ability uses, and therefore the Nox Staff is better than Seismic at Rise of the Six. Now let's take a look at my favourite boss in the game, which is Virago. Now with Virago, this is a lot harder to determine because there are many different variables that come into play here, not just the damage you deal. Because at Virago, half of the phases are not down to damage, but instead mechanics. So let's take a look at the different variables, shall we? You've got the variables of the ability to shield switch when you're using a dual wield, the flexibility if you're in a small team, your teammates may make mistakes, which does happen, and therefore if you're using dual wield seismics, you can back up bomb tank or base tank, and that is a huge plus for using seismics at Virago. Despite the damage differences being minuscule, you do get the possibility to use Concentrated Blast and utilize it fully multiple times throughout the Virago in a sunshine. In my eyes, seismics are better to use at Virago because you have that flexibility to be able to shield switch, take a quick resonance hit, let's say when you're still dealing a bit of damage, and you also can quickly switch to your shield if you need to heal up, or your spirit shield can reduce damage by 50%, so it's a big deal at Virago. So therefore, just to conceptualize this, seismics are better than the Nox Staff at Virago due to all of the different variables required to complete efficient, lengthy Virago trips. Now again, let's take a look at Nex soloing. Now Nex, I don't often do Nex, however I've been conferring with a few people in my clan who do a lot of Nex solos. Now let's have a look at Duel Wield versus two-hander again. Duel Wield makes it easier to tank the ice prisons, to use defensive abilities if you are running low on food. Maybe you're coming up towards the end of your trip and you really need to stick on that shield in the Zaros phase because you are running low on food. However, if you look on screen with the two screenshots, when you don't wear power armor and you wear purely tank armor or no armor at all, the two-hander staff in fact has a higher ability base damage, and this, with the combination of a better two-hander ability referring to Sonic Wave, fundamentally concludes that if you prefer to wear tank armor here, you should wield a two-hander Noxious staff. Equipping War Priest rather than power armor also gives you the added benefit of more invent space and easier switching between class setups. Geoso on screen right now is Nex soloing without any armor or food, but with the healing avatar. If you want to watch the full clip, highly recommend it. Click on the link in the description, it'll take you right there to check it out. Now let's take a look at the Kalphite King. The Kalphite King is a very popular boss, ranging from very high level experienced PvMers ranging down to the ones who are just starting to get into the higher end of PvMing. Now there's loads of different variables again with the Kalphite King, which makes this debate between seismics and Nox Staff extremely difficult because you've got different team sizes at Kalphite King, and you've got your duos, your hardcore duos, you then go to your 4-man to 5-man speed kills, and then you're off to your masses where you get lots of different lower levels going together for a laugh, or maybe going on a Slayer task. Now if you're hardcore duoing, you're not always going to be able to use devotion, and therefore you don't really want to lose out on DPS. It's going to be easier for you to switch to a shield and still DPS whilst you're with Duel Wield, so that would be the way to go for that. Now you've also got to think about what setup you're taking and the phases which Kalphite King can go into. So let's say you're taking a hybrid setup with Mage and Melee. When Kalphite King goes into his Mage state, you will use Mage against Kalphite King, and therefore you're better with the Nox Staff because you're running around and you can just cast off Sonic Wave with Thresholds combination, and therefore it's better because you're not going to fully utilize Concentrated Blast with dual seismics. However, if you can afford dual seismics and let's say a Nox bow or dual ascensions and take a range and a mage hybrid setup, then when Kalphite King is on its mage form, you can switch over to your range setup and DPS. So to conclude with this boss scenario, it really does depend on what your bank is worth. The most economical solution would be to have a Nox staff with a tier 90, let's say, melee switch of dry gauze. However, if you can really afford it, then Duel Seismic obviously is the best solution with Duel Ascensions or Nox Bow as a hybrid setup if you really want a full DPS to the maximum. However, again, the difference between that Nox staff and Duel Seismic is minuscule in terms of damage, but not price. However, let's say you're in a speed kill team, 4 or 5 people, and the two-handed Nox staff will be extremely viable because you can vote KK onto when one of your teammates are greened and use the devotion ability with melee prayer, and essentially that'll tank the hit, so you can use that and alternate between yourselves. Moving on to the third topic of this video, which is the ability rotations. It is all about the basics now since the combat beta changes came into the game. The basic abilities were increased in damage output, such as the Fire Breath ability and the Sonic Wave, things like that. And the Wild Magic and the Asphyxiates, things like that, or especially Wild Magic, was slightly reduced in damage, but the accuracy of Wild Magic was in fact increased, and especially when you're using Sonic Wave before it. So essentially the damage overall pretty much stayed the same, but the way you used your ability changed. To summarize the findings from this video, Duel Seismic overall has higher DPS than Nox staff when wearing power armor, roughly around 0.5% more damage. Duel Size also allows you the flexibility of having a shield on whilst also utilizing your main hand weapon. This comes in extremely handy at Virago if you're having to back up base or bomb tank. Also, Seismic comes in extremely useful at both Kalphite King as well, for that flexibility again if you're hardcoring it out. And overall, if you can fully utilize Concentrated Blast and you're not having to move around within a boss scenario, Seismic is extremely powerful. Now on to the two-handed Noxious Staff, another extremely powerful weapon, slightly less overall DPS than Seismic if you are fully utilizing a DPS role. However, Noxious Staff comes in extremely useful for Rise of the Six and is in fact better than Seismic for that particular boss. The main reasons for that is because you're running around, you're not able to utilize Concentrated Blast, and in fact the Sonic Wave combination with thresholds increases your accuracy of those thresholds, resulting in a greater DPS across the entire battle than if you were using Seismic. The last two remaining factors to take into consideration when looking at these two weapons are firstly the looks and secondly the price. So firstly, the cosmetic aspect of Duel Wield Seismics, they look a lot better than the Noxious Staff. Also, there is a large price difference between these two weapons and it just depends on what you can afford. You could always choose to buy both like some tryhards out there, and you could use Duel Seismic for the Concentrated Blast and then switch over to the Nox Staff for the Sonic Wave and Fire Breath ability. Yeah, let's not go there. I hope you enjoyed this thorough analysis between the Noxious Staff and the Duel Seismics. Be sure to give it a like if you learned something from this video as well. Thank you everybody for spending your time watching this video, and if you're a new viewer to this video, then the bottom left hand corner, if you click Virago's face, you will subscribe. Thanks a lot guys, happy scaping.